Due to insistent public demand, he is back on Kababayan LA. Last time was too short, 3 segments not enough, and now he is dishing all and telling all, not holding back. Ricardo Brown, the first ever Phil partner to play in the Philippine Basketball Association. So many controversies surrounding your playing years in the PBA, how you started and all that. But still, you endeared yourself to your fans. Even to this day, they clamor to see you.
Yeah, that really is amazing, the love and support that the Filipino fans showed me during my career as a player. But even today, through social media, it's very humbling and overwhelming. This reconnection process has been very heartwarming and really is something special to me.
And Ricky, you're saying reconnection because you were gone for a while. And why are you coming out now?
You know, I left in 1990. That was my last year of playing. Social media wasn't part of our life at the time. So basically out of sight, out of mind. And where this all started was about a year and a half ago, I came across a lot of my memorabilia that I had packed away. And I kind of just dug in and went through it and relived 10 years of basketball in the Philippines. And it really touched me. And I started to share that with a few people. A few Filipino fans that I was in touch with on Facebook, and I slowly started to share all of this memorabilia, and I saw how it touched people and how it inspired, and you know, the nostalgia that it created, and it just evolved into something really, really special right now. And that was how it all started, and today it's just it's fantastic.
All right, I have more questions about that, but talking about how it all started, let's go back a few years, not too many years ago, but you started your entry to the Philippines was to play for the Philippine national team, which at that time was being put together by Mr. Cojuangco. Although there were many controversies, and now you're ready to speak about it now, because that RP national team was actually, it actually featured players with not an ounce of Filipino blood. Tell me about that.
You know, the original plan of Mr. Cojuangco is exactly what's going on in the Philippines now with the RP team today.
And MVP. Now it's Manny Pangilinan.
Yes,
to say,
and
okay.
it really speaks of you know, the mind of Danding, who was ahead of his time. His goal was to bring glory to country. And the PBA, there's a political issue going on at the time with professional and amateur basketball. The professional players did not represent the country. So Mr. Cojuangco decided to do something on his own, and his goal was to come to the States and find as many Filipino Americans as possible to reinforce the local lineup. It wasn't just Filipino Americans he wanted. He wanted some reinforcements. The problem that he encountered was there weren't that many of us. There were only a few. So the next step was to bring in American players to represent the country that were available. And long story short, we ended up with a really strong team. We only had 2 Filipino Americans, and we had 5 or 6 local Filipino players, and we had a handful of American players. And because of that, the team wasn't embraced, by the fans. We had an excellent coach in Ron Jacobs.
And he's also non-Filipino.
Yes, he's non-Filipino. Actually, the coaching position was first offered to my coach at Pepperdine, Jim Herrick, who later went to UCLA and won a national championship. He turned down the position, but he recommended Ron, who was available. And the Philippines were very, very fortunate to get a coach of Ron's caliber. He was a sensational basketball coach, and he proved that over the years.
But as you said, when it was first being introduced to the Filipino public, we didn't like that. The Filipinos didn't like that.
No, absolutely not. They didn't like that. And individually for myself, it created some problems as well, because I was identified with that group.
Right.
Even though my mother's a Filipina.
Yeah.
There were so many comments and questions and in the media that I wasn't really a Filipino.
But what were you thinking during that time? Were you okay with staying with a team, or did you want out, or what were you thinking? Did you talk to Danding? Who did you talk to?
Well, my loyalty was to Mr. Cojuangco and to the country. That's the reason I came there, is to play for the Philippines. And my mindset was, this is all just part of what we have to go through, that there's going to be some serious growing pains along the way. I never realized that it was as bad as it really was.
But it didn't make sense to have non-Filipinos play for a Philippine national team. And we'll talk about that. The vision was good, but the means to get there was not really acceptable. We'll talk about that when we return on the show. Plus more controversies because you also negotiated with CRISPA, but ended up with great taste. More clarifications when we return. Don't go away. Ricky Brown is selling all today on Kababayan LA. You've nothing to lose.
No, nothing to lose.
And when you remember these stories and talking about the Philippine national team and Danding, we're going to be talking about CRISPA, Great Taste, Michael Keon later still on the show. What feelings does talking about this evoke?
You know, it brings back a lot of memories, both good and bad. Because just like Mr. Cojuangco, his heart was in the right place, and his vision was a good vision, as you just said. It's just the
execution.
Yeah, well, yeah, the execution and the fans who were so against us. It was not easy.
But do you understand where they were coming from? It's a backlash because it's supposed to be a Philippine national team playing for country when it's composed of non-Filipinos.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. In fact, at the time, some of us used to ask one another, how are the people going to see this?
Right.
Because we're wearing the Philippine flag on our uniform. And again, there were only 2 Filipino Americans and 5 or 6 Americans, and the American players, their heart was in the right place.
Right.
It wasn't they're over there just to make money. They really embraced the opportunity to represent the Philippines, but it was a very peculiar situation, to say the least.
It was a little bit of, it's not genuine, I would think, because, where will they get the passion to play for the Philippines if they don't have Filipino blood? But it's not only the Filipinos that didn't like and didn't embrace this team. Even in 1982, after other Asian countries threatened to boycott the ABC Games, the RP national team disbanded. So that was the reason you went, and then the team disbanded. You, I imagine, found yourself in a limbo.
Yeah, just to share a quick note on that, what Mr. Cojuangco did and Ron Jacobs did is he cut the team, the American piece of the team, down considerably, where there were only 3 or 4 of us that were planning on going to the ABC Games in Calcutta. And we were preparing, and we were still going to be very, very competitive. We thought we could win it. And at the last minute, the other nations said they were going to boycott the games. So we were just put in limbo.
Right.
And in 1982... I came back, and we were still waiting, and that was the most difficult year for me because everything was being questioned, and there wasn't any convincing movement to reinstating this team. So basically, it's 1982, and I felt like I was in the prime of my basketball career.
Yes,
and
you weren't playing.
I don't have a team to play for.
Yes.
So what I did is, just to occupy my time, I went back to school.
Okay.
At De La Salle. I took some classes, and I played exhibition games with De La Salle. And, in fact, on my Facebook, I have a few pictures of
Who did
me
you play? Yeah. Do you remember who you played with?
We played against other countries.
Oh, okay.
When they came in.
Okay.
I didn't get to play against Ateneo or anything like that.
Right.
I would have loved that.
But who were your teammates in La Salle at that time?
Franz Pumaden, Kenichi Ituri.
Yes.
Pilo Pumaden was the coach.
Okay.
It was a great group, fantastic, and a lot of those guys ended up at San Miguel.
Yes, and you had fun with them?
Yes.
Was that, you think, did that give way for people to embrace you more and maybe try to clean some of the negative notions from being with a team that wasn't really embraced?
I don't think so, because out of sight, out of mind. I was in Manila, but I wasn't playing anywhere. There was no exposure other than with La Salle, and it was very minimal. So there was still that stigma of myself being part of that RP team. Right.
And in 1983, and this must have been difficult for you, the following year, 1983, you mentioned earlier your loyalty was to Danding and to the RP team. But in 1983, you made a decision to leave the team. What was it like?
Yeah, I remember that conversation very well. I went to see Mr. Cojuangco, and I asked him for, his blessing and permission to go to the PBA, because there were teams PBA was definitely interested in me at the time, but my first step was to get permission from Mr. Cuanco. And he shared with me that the RP team was still very, very up in the air, and it's probably the best thing to do. Okay. So that was my first step towards moving towards the PBA.
It must have been mixed emotions for you. It was, to me, it feels like you were leaving a father. Because he basically took you in, embraced you, took care of you, wanted to groom you for this team, and then you couldn't play for him. And he was this guy also sacrificing and letting you go.
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Cuanco, without him, I may have never had the opportunity to come to the Philippines. Mm-hmm. He's the reason that I came to the Philippines to play for the country. So leaving him was very, very difficult. My loyalty to him was 100%.
Did you keep in touch with him?
Yes, you know, I have.
These years?
Well, it's difficult to keep in touch, but I send messages to the secretary and forward it to Mr. Cuanco. And when I go back in July, that's one of the first things that I want to do is just to see him and thank him for what he's done for me.
What do you remember most about him and your interactions with him?
He was a very, very dedicated, committed person to whatever endeavor he was working on. And this one in particular, of bringing glory to country, mm-hmm. He was absolutely 100% committed to make that happen.
So you owe that to him for getting you to the Philippines, but you also owe your PBA playing years to one guy, in a way, in the Philippines, and that was Michael Keon.
Well, the thing about Michael Keon, this is really some interesting stuff. All happened within the last 3 days. Mm-hmm. I was in touch with Danny Floro, okay. The team manager of Crispa, mm-hmm. And they actually flew me in to Manila and put me up at the Salahis Hotel. I remember very well.
You remember everything.
I remember.
Good memory.
On Rojas Boulevard.
Okay.
And we were negotiating. Uh-huh. That was the year that Tommy Manotoc was going to take over. Mm-hmm. And they already had a mega superstars with Atoy Ko and Philip Cesar and Abit Gidabin and Bernie Fabiosa.
It's exciting.
So it was really exciting for me to go to one of the powerhouse teams, along with Toyota mm-hmm. at the time. And then, all of a sudden, the last couple of days, I get a contact call from Gintong Alay.
All right. We're going to be continuing this discussion when we return on the show. So Gintong Alay, talking to Crispa and then getting a call from Gintong Alay, and that turned things around. We're going to be talking about that when we return. Don't go away. I started my broadcasting career in the Philippines with the Philippine Basketball Association, but I felt really bad because growing up I was watching this guy. But then when I got to work in the PBA, he was not there anymore, and it is my pleasure and honor to be interviewing him today on Kababayan LA, Ricky Brown, and he is just telling us all about the controversies with the Philippine national team. And right about before we paused for a break, he was talking about negotiating with Crispa, one of the most loved teams in the PBA in Philippine basketball history. And then what happened?
Well, I was really excited about the prospects of going to first the PBA and then to play with
Crispa. Yes.
Crispa. That was like a dream for me. And at the last couple of days before they were going to have this selection, they didn't have a PBA draft then. They had some kind of unofficial selection of players coming to the PBA. I get a call from Gintong Alay and Mr. Michael Keon. Mm-hmm. And I was told by the PBA office that he's the head of the amateur basketball now, so you need to go see him. And I went to see him not really knowing what to expect, maybe, hopefully, just to sign a release form or something like that. And his information to me was, we're not going to release you. And this is just a couple of days before things were going to be finalized.
Wow.
And in our conversation, he said, you have to play for the national team first.
But there was no national team at that time.
Well, they were forming one.
Okay, they wanted you to wait.
They wanted me to wait. They wanted me to play.
Oh, okay.
And that would be that was going to be very difficult for me.
So you were caught in the middle of this struggle between amateur and pro, which is also, it happens all the time.
Yeah, I really felt like a pawn here, that I was in the middle between these two political pieces of Philippine basketball.
Were you angry, frustrated, sad? What were you feeling at that time?
I was a little bit upset at the time because this was all a done deal for me to go to Crispa.
Yes.
And then at the last second, I get word from the BAP head that you're going to have to play with Gintong Alay.
Okay, so major roadblock. And then?
Big roadblock. Well, through further conversation, we left it at, it was going to be difficult for me to do that, you know, without Ron Jacobs, the coach, and Mr. Kawanko, because my blessing from Mr. Kawanko was to go to the PBA,
exactly,
not to go to Gintong Alay.
Right.
And I was not going to do that.
Yes.
And maybe that to some people will sound negative, but my loyalty was to Mr. Kawanko to play for the RP team. And I gave him my word that this is about the PBA. So to go back to another amateur team, it was not going to happen.
Right.
So the next day, Mr. Keon calls for me to come back, and he said, I have some good news for you. He said that you won't have to play for the national team because you're already a professional. And I said, well, you know, what does that mean? And I was kind of happy to hear where he's going. And he said, you signed a contract with the Houston Rockets out of Pepperdine. And I said, yeah, that's correct.
Right.
And he said, that makes you a professional.
Professional, okay.
So it was a little bit of a loophole to allow me to leave Gintong Alay.
So basically, Michael Keon gave you a roadblock, but then at the same time, he took that
he opened
roadblock.
It for
Yes,
me, yes,
also, okay.
Yeah. And that was fine. And
so the bad guy became the good guy.
He became a real good guy. He became a real good guy. And so I was released, and I had already gone through my naturalization process. Back in those days, you had to renounce your American citizenship. There was no dual citizenship.
That must have been difficult for you as well, Ricky, to renounce American citizenship. Everybody wants to be an American citizen. Most Filipinos come here, they want to be an American citizen.
Well, I remember calling my mother before I was going to do this, and my mother's a Filipina, and I told her that I'm going to have to renounce my American citizenship to gain Filipino. To become a Filipino.
What did she say?
Well, she was very worried. She was very scared of that. She didn't quite understand what that meant. But that was where my heart was. I was determined to stay, and I was willing to do that. And at the time, I really didn't see it as a risk. It's something that I really wanted to do. So I did that, and I thought everything is smooth sailing now. I'm going to be wearing the green uniform. In fact, Mr. Floro gave me a bunch of Crispa T-shirts, and I was wearing them around Manila.
Right.
So proud. And then I get a phone call.
Okay. This is like a teleserie. Okay. And then?
I get a phone call from the PBA about 2 nights before. This is supposed to be official.
Meaning you were going to sign contracts. That was going to make it official.
I had already verbally agreed to a contract with Crispa. It was just a matter of becoming official, first of all, to go to Crispa in the PBA selection. And then just to finalize it.
Okay, and then?
And I got a call from the PBA, and they said that, you know, you might not be able to play for Crispa. And I said, oh, my goodness.
Why? Another saga. We're going to be talking about that when we return on the show. Don't go away. Talking to the quick brown fox today on Kababayan LA. My family was such a huge fan, my dad, my brother. And I grew up, you know, knowing of how well-loved you were in the Philippines, not knowing about all these background stories that you're sharing with us today. Thank you so much for being candid. Earlier, before we paused for a break, you talked about, you know, finally being able to play for Crispa and then getting another phone call.
Yeah, I had a late-night phone call and a late-night meeting with a representative from Great Taste.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about Great Taste at the time. I knew nothing. But I was advised by the PBA to go meet with the representative, and I did. Mr. Ignacio Gotao, who was the team manager, and he shared with me that they may have an opportunity to bring me on their team. And I met with him, and I really liked Mr. Gotao. He was a straight shooter, very aggressive, all business.
Okay.
And that was okay with me. So he said, just be prepared. And we talked about a potential contract. We went over stipulations. I had no agent. Everything, I was doing this all on my own.
That must have been difficult.
It was difficult.
I was navigating everything.
I was a very naive young kid and really didn't know anything, and I was on my own. So long story short is I ended up with Great Taste, and Crispa was somehow, some way out.
And were they upset?
Well, that didn't please Mr. Floro at all. And
what happened to the shirts?
I kept the shirts. I remember wearing them the Great Taste first practice, and the players said,
oh, no, yes. You need a new shirt.
Don't let Mr. Gotao see you wearing those.
Yes.
Mr. Floro came back later on the eve of a championship game between Great Taste and Crispa and filed a lawsuit against me and basically wanted to recover the funding for the expenses that they paid for me to be in Manila during the negotiation process, which was okay.
Right.
It was okay.
Great Taste covered that, or did
Yes.
you cover that?
I covered that myself, and the timing was bad. It was on the the night before the championship,
yes.
so maybe there was a little strategy involved in that. But I was okay with it, and if that closed the door, then
Who
so be
won
it.
that year?
Crispa won that year.
Okay.
That's when they had Billy Ray Bates.
Did
so that
you
would be
have any
difficult.
regrets? Okay, so 5 years in Great Taste. We're running out of time. I thought one full show would be enough. Still not enough. You should come back. 5 years with Great Taste, and then you moved to San Miguel. All these stories, everything that happened to you in the 10 years in the Philippines, would you do, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently? Would you have done anything differently?
No, I don't think I would. I came with my heart in the right place to play for the country. My only regret is that I really didn't get to play for the RP national team, to help bring that glory to the country.
So no regrets? You could have played for Crispa. No regrets about that? You could have, you left Great Taste. No regret about that?
No, it all worked out. I left Great Taste. It was kind of like a marriage that just needed to separate a little bit at the time, and San Miguel was a fabulous organization. So in hindsight, I was truly blessed, very fortunate, and I wouldn't change anything other than somehow, some way, find a way to wear the RP uniform.
What about acting? You also made a movie with Dolphy.
That was great. I love that. I wish I had another opportunity, because after you do something the first time, you'll do it better the second.
And I also found out that one of your biggest fans in the Philippines is Mr. Gary V, Mr. Pure Energy.
Oh, yeah.
I was tweeting about you and having you on the show, and he actually sent me a message saying, can you tell him that I'm such a big fan? And I'm sure these are the guys that you will reconnect with when you go to the Philippines.
Definitely. And I was a big fan of Gary's, and he used to come to the dugout of San Miguel, and just a wonderful guy.
Right. And so you're going back to reconnect with your fans face-to-face in Manila. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm leaving. I'll actually arrive in Manila on July 9, and the whole sole purpose of this trip is to reconnect with, first of all, the Filipino fans and Philippine basketball, just to touch people and thank them for all the love and support that they gave me, and up close and personal. And that's what the social media allows me to do that. But it will culminate when I go back to the Philippines.
Would you be, yes or no, would you be open to moving back to the Philippines?
Yes, I'm very receptive to, down the road, a possibility of going back to Manila on a permanent basis.
I'm thinking maybe coaching. Would you be open to coaching?
If I could write it up, what I really would like to do is to help build a team. Not necessarily to coach it. Maybe a front office position, a general manager position. Where you behind the scenes and off the radar a little bit, but you're putting together the winning pieces. And it's just like me as a principal at a school.
Because you've had so many experiences as well
Yes.
with a team as a player.
And I think I could do very well with that. And if given the opportunity, I'm very receptive to listening.
And moving back to the Philippines. Wow.
Yes.
Are you writing a book? You have so many stories to tell. You should write a book.
I would like to do a book. I've shared on Facebook with my friends and fans that I would donate all money to charity. I think I have a very interesting story, especially as the first Filipino American.
Yes.
A lot of controversy along the way.
Yes.
And I know Filipino fans are historians of Philippine basketball. So I have a great desire to share that.
And we are going to look forward to that. But for now, Facebook, look him up on Facebook. You should be on Twitter. He's going to the Philippines. Tell your friends and family about it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And we hope to have you back on the show. For now, thank you for joining us today on the show. I'll see you again tomorrow.